is certainly good to be here, and I have a number of things I want to share with you, most of which will come to you by slide. I hope you don't mind that. And I want to speak actually in keeping with a promise that I made myself. There's probably a number of things I need to remember, but two that are very important to me. The first is that I do not... Somebody's wondering what the second one is. It's that I remember the first one. Today we're going to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King. We're going to identify a number of things that I think are very important about him and the particular purpose for which he stood, and I might add died. But I want us to do a little bit of remembrance that will spark the interest of some. Some of you may know these things, some of you may not. So I'm going to go off the page a little bit. You know, we can Google everything nowadays, but we only get the database that they input. So it's not always everything the way it was. And I noticed there's a number of diverse students here, so we're not all of one particular background or culture. There are some of you I noticed that are African American. Some of you probably aren't even American. You're just in America, and that's okay. There are some of you that have come here particularly, and perhaps most importantly, to learn and to share a relational learning experience with other people that you would never meet. And to me, that's what college is about, an opportunity, one that I hope none of you would squander. These are actual signs that were posted a long time ago, not necessarily any time recent for us. We serve whites, no Spanish or Mexicans. And there's something called Jim Crow laws, and if I did not bring this up, I could not do honor properly to Dr. King, because he had a reason for the message and the work that he did to unite humanity. And he worked hard at it. But the foundation of his reason had to do with the Jim Crow laws, which were written and enforced by the Democratic Party. It says they're 1876 through 1965. That's a long time for whatever it is that they thought was important enough that we should know. But I want to share something with you that I think is more important. Jim Crow laws started as black-only laws written and enforced by the Democratic Party. It's important we know that, and I'm not going to be political with you at all. I just want you to know that as his platform stood, he wasn't trying to make more people Democrats and he wasn't trying to make more people Republicans. He dealt with the people who were in the authority at his day, and he brought it forward. And that's what you and I need to learn how to do, to bring it forward. But some people don't want to know that, and they fight about issues that don't truly matter. I have been around a long time, not as long as some, but longer than others. And one thing that I've learned is we can go about it the wrong way to try to get the right solution. And I happen to believe that Dr. King chose the right way. Jim Crow laws were state and local laws enforcing racial segregation in the southern United States. Enacted after the Reconstruction period, these laws continued in force until 1965. They mandate de jure, and that means by right according to law. So when someone argued or wanted to, all they had to do is say, we have the mandate of de jure. And that meant that they were legally able to racially segregate in all public facilities in the states of the former Confederate States of America, starting in 1890, with a separate but equal status for African Americans. Jim Crow laws were statutes and ordinances established between 1874 and 1975 to separate white and black races in the African South. In theory, it was created separate but equal. Would anyone say that for me, please? Separate
But equal.
Thank you. Thank you. Separate but equal treatment. Now think about that. Separate treatment but equal treatment. I have a hard time wrapping my head around that, especially when the sign posted says colored served in the rear. But in practice, Jim Crow laws condemned black citizens to inferior treatment and facilities. Jim Crow laws were enforced with posted signage into the mid-1970s in Ohio. I lived in Ohio in the 1970s, and I can tell you, that was enforced, not just south in the United States, but also into northern states of the United States. And it did carry on in the 1970s. Diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion. When I was asked to speak to you, I pondered a little bit about how best to do this, because I look out in the audience and I see diversity. And that's a good thing. But I do not know if there is inclusion. So I believe they are two different things. Some of you may think they are the same. I'd like to draw your attention into the next few slides. Diversity and inclusion, I believe Dr. King wanted both. I really do. I believe that he wanted both. And please, as I put this before you, take a second and try to notice some of the things in the slide, okay? Don't just look for the words. How many of you are motivated by pictures? But here's the question. Was diversity and inclusion that Dr. King fought for, was it by today's standards? And as you look at that crowd, and I do hope that you do that, what is the dream of this crowd? I see Dr. King identified. I have a dream. I see some things that kind of make sense, but I'm looking at the people. Because the protest isn't the sign. It's the people carrying the sign. Can you hear what I'm saying? The protest is not the sign. We can stick the signs in the ground, walk away. If that was sufficient to make change, there wouldn't be any people holding them. So the real protest is the people, not the sign. In a crowd without diversity, where is inclusion? I'm looking at this, and the one thing I notice is that all these are people of color. I'm struggling to find diversity, and I certainly don't see inclusion. Some of you should be thinking along the same line. So many times we want something to happen, but we don't think ahead far enough to know how best we can portray what it is that we want. If you are indeed a fighter, and I think that some of you are, you're going to think this thing through before you go out and make a statement. Because in the mind of those that you wish to reach, you have to leave a lasting mark. And trust me when I tell you, bruises heal. That's not necessarily a lasting mark. Statements that are lived in the heart of its people remain. Diversity means more than just acknowledging and or tolerating difference. Diversity is a set of conscious practices that involve understanding and appreciating interdependence of humanity. Would you say the word interdependence? Interdependence. Now, I know there wasn't supposed to be all this interaction, but I want you to understand that that means something. That we're not just counting on somebody else to get it done. We're not counting on somebody else to make the example that we must follow. We have to include ourselves. Interdependence of humanity, cultures, and the natural environment. All of this is involved in diversity. Practicing mutual respect for qualities and experiences that are different from our own. And I think that's the challenge for some of us. Understanding that diversity includes not only ways of being, but also ways of knowing. Recognizing that personal culture and institutionalized discrimination creates and sustains privileges for some while creating and sustaining disadvantages for others. In coming before you today, I knew that some of you, in advance, would be troubled by some things that I say or what I truly represent. But I'm okay with that because I've learned to be bigger than my circumstance. Is it okay if I talk like that?
Yeah.
I should be checking. Where's Dr. McNulty? The reality is that we need to understand that we have a part and a role to play in this that is a lot bigger than telling somebody else what they should do. Building alliances across differences so that we can work together to eradicate all forms of discrimination. That's truly when you have a culture that is diversified. These things are obvious. Finally, we acknowledge that categories of differences are not always fixed, but also can be fluid. Because the standard that we started with is not the same standard that was designed in the beginning. We respect individual rights to self-identification. And we recognize that no one culture is intrinsically superior to another. That involves inclusion. And I believe if I am successful today in talking with you, I will manage to merge the two together a little bit. They are very separate in my thinking. But as I live and interact with human beings, especially ones that don't look like me or think like I do or practice the things I do, I am learning that the best way for me to be accepted by them is to accept them. If I fail to do that, I will not be accepted by them. I have a number of quotes I'll share with you from Dr. King because I truly believe that on his day in which we are recognizing and honoring him annually, thank God in these United States we can do that. I lived in another state a number of years ago where it was not celebrated as a national holiday. It was not celebrated as a state holiday. Dr. King Day came and I had to protest for a day off so I could honor Dr. King. And I am just of that age group that I was just behind all the real activity. But I am in the wake of what he represented. So I'm telling you that there are privileges that some enjoy that others have no clue that they do not. This is the great new problem of mankind. We have inherited a large house, a great world house, in which we have to live together, black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu, a family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interests, who, because we can never again live apart. How many of you notice the world's getting smaller and smaller? In fact, the older you get, the more traveled you are, the smaller the world becomes. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace. God made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined the times before appointed and bounds of their habitation, that they should seek the Lord, if haply they might feel after him and find him, though he be not far from every one of us. That's in the Holy Bible, the book of Acts, chapter 17, verses 26 and 27. In other words, if you can hear me, God intended for humanity to live together. He must have been thinking diversity because he sure didn't make any two of us the same. Hello. You think, oh, okay, I know somebody. Well, there are twins, and I understand that. But if you put your thumbprint down, what you see on the paper is different from the person next to you. God did not make any two of us identical. Some of you may have heard of the Georgia Guidestones, some of you may have not. In 1980, those who are the real thinkers of the world, who believe they can possess humanity, have put out some standards. And they put it, some of us are so bold that we just build a monument of the things we believe. They put it in a number of different languages in a place where it could be seen that you can come and find out what your future is if you dare believe the Georgia Guidestones. We cannot share this same earth without choosing a path of inclusion. I'm going to come back to that in just a little bit, but I want you to first hear and see this. This is a real thing. A lot of people have great ideas, they never tell anybody. These people got together and they said, we're going to make sure that America knows. Not just America, but we're going to make sure the world knows. It's in the primary languages of the world. The first question which the priest and the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? Some of you may know the story, some may not, but it's okay. Study the image. It's obviously a man is helping somebody else who really needs help. But the Good Samaritan reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? That's what Dr. King proposed in one of his messages, one of his speeches. He wanted people to understand that we're really here for each other. We may not think about it and we may not know it, but we really are here for each other. I still believe that standing up for the truth of God is the greatest thing in the world. This is the end purpose of life. The end of life is not to be happy. The end of life is not to achieve pleasure, or rather, and avoid pain. The end of life is to do the will of God, come what may. Now that's Dr. King. Now if you think about the man, he was a Baptist minister, and I believe that his real foundation was the Word of God. You see, all of us need a standard to build on. Amen? We all need a standard to build on. And the reality of what he represented is bigger than the church. In fact, it's bigger than most things that you and I will ever connect to. Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together in peace and thereby transform this pending cosmic elegy into a creative song of brotherhood. Does anybody know what an elegy is? It's a song of mourning. Something's happening that you and I may be able to fix. But if we're going to fix it, we've got to learn the importance of diversity and inclusion. We have to learn it. Georgia Guidestones. I told you I'd come back to that. I want us to understand, just in a brief moment, what these people wanted, and then see if that's really the future that you want. There are so many things happening in the world that you and I cannot change, we cannot fix. I am a firm believer that if anything is going to get fixed, it has to start right here. I can't fix other places, but I can fix right here. So you and I, since we happen to be here, should be thinking, what difference can we make if we start right here? There are 10 tenets. That's what's listed on those stones. If you were to look them up, I am certain this is what you would find. Point number 1, maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. That's what they're pushing for. In every identifiable language in the world, that's the standard that they're going to bring humanity to. Guide reproduction wisely, improve fitness and diversity. Improve it, it says. Improving fitness and diversity. So you get to work out even if you didn't want to. You're going to eat certain things that are going to cause you to be where you should be, the right weight. It says, unite humanity with a living new language. So sooner or later, all of us are going to learn how to speak to each other with this new language. Rule. To rule. Would you say rule? To rule. This means that somebody's got to be in charge if you're going to rule, right? To rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. Now, I have no problem with that, but I do enjoy this thing called freedom. So they're saying that we're going to change that because we're going to rule passion, faith, and tradition with tempered reason. Protect people, it says protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. That sounds okay. I want that. God knows there are enough things unjust in the world today. Let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. Now, I don't think that's double talk. I think that really what they're saying is that each nation can set up their own laws and work things out, but whenever they step across that boundary, there's going to be a world court that steps in and fixes things. Avoid petty laws and useless officials. I happen to believe that some of those petty laws and useful officials are the things that govern and keep us safe sometimes, that show us the boundaries that some of us need to learn. I think they're still important. Balance personal rights with social duties. Somebody's going to govern humanity. And when they're in authority to do that, this is one of the tenets that they're planning. To rule the 500 million people in world population with. There's like 7.5 billion people in the planet right now. In order to reduce us down to just 500 million, there's going to be a whole lot of people go away. It says to prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. Seeking harmony with the infinite. Infinite. There's something that goes on and on and on and on. And they're in a quest to bring all humanity into focus with that. Now, I'd be okay if that was God. But since their plans don't always include things that God intended, I kind of wonder who this infinite source is. It says, be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. And they thought that so important that at the end they repeated it. Leave room for nature. But is that our future of inclusion? Some of you may remember these two past presidents, their wives, to identify with those who were in authority over this nation not too very long ago. And they were pushing diversity. And actually, if you study what they were teaching, they were really pushing inclusion, especially the taller of the two past presidents. Pushing hard for inclusion. And I don't care where your platform is. I don't care if you were more of this one or that one. I don't care which one you stood with or against. It means nothing to me. But the reality is that you and I must live this thing every day. And if we're not careful how we choose to live this thing every day, whether we come into agreement with them or disagreement, it doesn't matter. We still got to live tomorrow. Diversity is the range of human differences, including, but not limited to, race, ethnicity, gender. Now think about these. Gender identity, sexual orientation, age, social class, physical ability or attributes, religious or ethical value systems, national origin, and political beliefs. Inclusion, that was diversity. Inclusion is involvement and empowerment where the inherent worth and dignity of all people are recognized. An inclusive university, which I would think, according to Dr. McNulty, you're moving toward, An inclusive university promotes and sustains a sense of belonging. It values and practices respect for the talents, beliefs, backgrounds, and ways of living of its members. That is saying, if you will allow me, indulge me just a moment, each one of you has something that not only makes this university an asset to you, but makes you an asset to this university. I believe, if it's not too forward, that the intention of the Vice President of Student Affairs is to pull that out of you, to extract that value so that you can add to this university a strength that it didn't have without you. You're more important than you know. In life, and I know some of you have identified with many tapestries and beautiful works of art, in life we see a lot of things that are intricately put together. And I don't know about you, but I often wonder the patience and talent that it took to make that thing so. How did they remember to keep going in that direction? How did they know to keep it straight? Truth is, if that's a picture of all of us, I have a question for you. Which thread are you? Because in this social system that we now live and walk in, that we should learn to serve in, somewhere we're a thread in that picture. Somewhere we are part of the fabric, the fiber, the moral significance of the big picture. And if we don't have a clue what that is, chances are the thread next to us will stand out where we do not. For maximum achievement, any community must endorse the potential of its members. And I am a living witness to this, by the way. Any community must endorse the potential of its members, allowing each of them to supply to the fullness of their abilities. Part of the reason that I am standing here before you, and this is not my first rodeo, I've been to the university, college a number of times, to identify the importance and significance of what somebody in a community can offer, that individual has to first be recognized. The individual has to realize that I am here to offer something. I'm not here to hide. I'm not here to extend an amount of time and then disappear. So many of you come to college and you're here for 2 years and you've got plans to go on to something else, but you are depositing something here. And whether you know it or not, you're leaving a residue. Hello. Look at the person next to you and tell them that. Maybe they don't know. You're leaving a residue. Somebody says, really? I didn't think you noticed. You're leaving a residue. And some of you are so important to not just this college, but to this area, that when you leave, the community notices. And trust me when I tell you, you were significant and still will be in your absence. This is the kind of thing that I think, and I happen to know personally a few of the officials, I think this community is looking for. Colby truly can be an oasis on the plains. The church is supposed to be a microcosm of this. It really is. Supposed to be a microcosm of this. From whom the whole body fitly joined together and compacted by that which every joint supplies, according to the effectual working in the measure of every part, makes the increase of the body unto the edifying of itself in love. In other words, each person has something that is so valuable that if they would add it, it would change the dynamic of the community. And the church is supposed to be a microcosm of that, but actually the community is supposed to be a macrocosm of that. These United States are even a larger macrocosm of that. If they would ask us, we might have something to say. Most of the time, and maybe some of you can relate with this, I would hope some of your older ones will. Most of the time when Dr. King is recognized, there's a particular speech that he made on one occasion. And it may as well be titled, I Have a Dream. Because most of the time when he's researched or he's brought up, he's addressed, that's what we hear about. So it would be wrong of me not to remind you that you must also get a dream. You must also hold on to something bigger than yourself, become something more than you thought you could be, and start to make a difference where you are. Dr. King represented something we all want, granted, if only for ourselves, to be noticed for our worth and accepted for our contribution to society. That is what makes us equal. It may not be an equal amount, but it's what is lacking from that person who's already added. So without my part, they're not complete, and the community will be stronger if I add what is necessary. That is what brings mankind from all over the earth to the United States of America. They're in pursuit of the dream, to belong, to add something to society, to be recognized for who they are and the worth that they hold, to be more than they were in the place that they left. Actually, most of them will tell you, I just want to be free. Dr. King says this, and honestly, I think we'd be remiss if we don't remember this. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. My wife and I raised 4 children, and we were driven with a desire to see them add to society and not take anything from it. Some of you know what I'm talking about. There are many people that are taking from society that have no desire to add. So we were pushing them. You heard the term tiger mom? I think my wife was one. Before that term came out, before it was popularized, you know, they usually show Asian people as tiger moms. Trust me when I tell you, you don't have to be Asian to be a tiger mom. Our oldest, we have 4, our oldest has a doctorate in pharmaceutical. She is the individual that the doctors call when they want to give a medication to a patient and have no clue what that medication will do, especially with the other medications they're presently taking. She is second in authority in her department in the whole of the hospital. And when she finally got out of school, she stepped right into that position from her education years. Adding to society, I might add a 6-figure income helps. My second, we have 4, I told you. He works in a plant or factory, and he supplies educational material, the factory does actually. But he works in a department there, a number of departments, but he goes out on occasion and installs these educational tools in schools all over the United States. I think he's adding to society. Certainly no wants or warrants for him. The next one happens to be a staff sergeant in the military, Army, and has served for a number of years, and he raised so quickly in the ranks that his commanders were surprised and asked him if he came from a military background. He said, no, sir, but my parents had rules. Hello. That's hard to find nowadays. He said, my parents had rules. He said, well, son, you certainly are a good example of authority. And he raised in the ranks quickly. My last baby, child, is a girl. All of these are adults. They're in the 30s. Hello. But my last one said, I want to make a difference. I think I'm going to choose a field that there will always be a need for me. She became a police officer. Right out of her education, started here actually, and went on to Pittsburgh, Kansas, And right after her graduation, went right into the police department down there as an officer, later became a detective, has served for a number of years now. You talk about a parent praying, we just pray that, my God, they didn't come home every night. The reality of their service is to uphold justice, to stand in the face of adversity and to make a difference in society. That's what starts right here. From the prison pit to the pulpit. If we are to be free, we must forget our need for hate. Trust me when I tell you, that one doesn't come easy, but you have to do it. You have to do it. Some of you may have heard of Nelson Mandela, some of you may not. That's okay. He was imprisoned because he wanted equality in his country. He wanted the rule of law to be turned right side up. It was turned upside down prior, something called apartheid. Segregation in all its forms is still segregation. He says, as I walked out the door toward the gate, that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison. I don't think any truer words could ever be said. He realized that he couldn't hold the bitterness that took him to prison when he was now set free. By the way, he almost walked right into the presidency of the country when he got out of prison because his heart was in the right place and he fought for all the people. Mankind has created, or rather was created, for communion. I believe that today the definition for communion is common union. And I think that common union equals inclusion. Think about it. Because you and I really are here for each other. Dr. McCall.
How about that? That's pretty good.
Thank you.
You're good at that, huh? Just going to open up for some questions. I have the mic. Who has a question? I'll give you the mic, too.
This was an excellent speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can you share where you're from and what were the guiding factors for you to become a pastor?
Yes, I can do that. Thank you very much. I am from Central Ohio. Some of you may have heard of Columbus, Ohio. I'm from Zanesville, Ohio, just east of there. Right on I-70. Just get on and don't look. Keep going. And I grew up in Central Ohio, and from very meager beginnings. When we hear about people who made it good out of the projects. I played football, and I was so purposed in my play that it got me a scholarship to first Ohio State and any of the colleges that I would choose after that. I did go to college, University of South Carolina, and they had a special way to get out of practice. You could get out of practice if you were willing, one day a week, to go to the Christian education class. It was really just a Bible study. And I opted to do that one time. I had no church or Christian background. And when I went, like most of you, I got bored. Because I had no clue what they were talking about. Well, I got injured in college, forced out. That happens to a lot of people who have promise and potential. Forced out, and at 20 years old, had an opportunity to meet the Lord. And I say it just like that. You know, I found Jesus. Well, was he lost? No. You know, he's knocking at my door and I wasn't even listening. So I had an opportunity to surrender to him. And I did at 20 years old. I'm 61 today, if you're wondering. But at 20 years old, I made a decision. And my mother taught me something long before that year, that there is nothing holding me back but me. Circumstances are always going to be mounted against you. But if you let them control you, you will never reach your potential. And I believe that. So I started going to Bible schools, and through the different years and educational process, I became a minister of a small church and started a pastorate. And I've spoken in crowds, hundreds, and crowds 3 or 4. And I realized that the most important thing to God isn't the number of people, but it's the heart of the individual. And by that choice, I'm here today. Not for the money, not for the crowd, but to accomplish a purpose that is deep in my spirit, that I, on occasion, get to release to you. So I thank you for your attention today.
Any other questions?
She has one here in the front. I know, I can probably hear you, but they may not.
Okay, I don't know, this is kind of a personal question, kind of not. Do you feel like coming to Colby, did you face like any discrimination or anything like that? Because I've asked like my friends who are from like Alabama and everything coming up to Goodland if they still face any discrimination, and they said it's not necessarily like the direct sayings or anything, but it's like the weird looks in Walmart or people following them around to make sure they're not like stealing or anything. So I'm just wondering, like coming to Colby, did you face anything like that?
Absolutely. And I might add that I've been ministering as a pastor locally since 2002 and have moved my family here in 2006. So this is 2019. I've been here a long time. But there was a number of years, some of you can bear testimony to this, that most of the time, and I mean at least once a month, myself or my wife was asked, do you live here? And that is up until the last time I spoke here at the college, actually. Is that 2015? So you think about all those years, and you think about the time that I had to answer that same question over and over. And then I realized something. It wasn't that they were rejecting me, but they didn't quite understand how to include me. So that really touches on diversity, if you understand what I'm saying. I was a part of the community long before they even knew who I was. And when they came to realize that I was here, doors swung open. One of my more preferred friends is the mayor of Colby, Kansas. I have known law enforcement and personally had coffee with some and shared stories and relationship, because more than the position is the person. And if we can allow ourselves to get to know and appreciate who they are, not because of the color of their skin, but the content of their character, your friends from down south will also realize it's okay to look people in the eye here, to say things that you maybe wouldn't say down south. And I went to school in South Carolina, so I can attest to some of that as well. But I do know that this is a good place. The heart of the leadership here is to include and to receive individuals of differing backgrounds. But you have to make yourself or present yourself friendly. If you walk around the community doing this all the time, I can guarantee you they're going to watch you. And yes, I did have a few in the beginning look at me when I came into the school. And I walked around, and I walked around. I walked around till they had to ask me, can I help you? I said, you know what? I saw you watch me when I first came in, and I was waiting on you to ask me. Yeah, I came in for this. And then they come up and get it. But I was hoping that they would quit watching me and learn that I could walk through the store like the next person and only get the item that I plan to pay for. And so many people have changed their respect level when they understood that I was a minister of many years and raised 4 children to be assets to society and not cost. Dad. Thank you. Anyone else?
Right here.
Somebody gonna ask me a hard question? Oh, you're gonna ask me a hard question.
Earlier in your presentation, you mentioned that you were in a state that didn't celebrate Martin Luther King Day.
Yes.
Right? What state were you in?
Arizona, for a number of years. I think that they now, and have since, adapted to accept the holiday, but for a number of years they were not. And I was there for a number of years. Anyone else? That was an easy question.
Well, I'm the mayor of Colby, and I'd like to say that I appointed him to be on one of the really important boards we have here in Colby to maintain the quality of life here on the zoning commission. He's done a great job, and it's because of his character. And I knew he had Colby in his heart that I appointed him there, and that was the big reason I did that. He's been super on that zoning commission.
Thank you, sir. I want to share a personal note real quick before another question comes, and I do hope you have at least one more. We were told that we had an hour, and I know I kept within my 40 minutes. I got to know the sheriff, or not the sheriff, sorry, but the chief of police in a small town east of here that I lived in for a number of years. And when I came to the community, I was asked to do a very special funeral. It was a difficult funeral. It was a suicide. It was hard. I didn't quite know the people, but I did the funeral, and he was there. You know how the police have an escort and all that stuff for the graveside traffic. But anyway, he was there, and he had tears in his eyes as I was giving the dissertation for the funeral. And he came up to me, still wet eyes, and said, "Thank you so much for touching our community and for caring about this family." And it was one that the community didn't readily care about. But the point was that he saw the sincerity of my heart. And he became a friend of mine. I know him to this day, and personally he asked me if I would do his funeral should the day come. And he still serves the community, not there, but a larger community. And I believe that he's an asset to my life. He said something to me one time, and this is what I want to share with you. He said, "I know the people here will treat you strange because they don't understand. If you were Hispanic, they already can label you. But they don't see a lot of black or African American people, so they don't know how to handle you. All they know is what they see on TV. Trust me, I didn't come out of Compton. But the reality is that they were a little apprehensive of me." And he said, "Please know that I'm telling you the truth. They don't hate you." I said, "Well, sir, I really didn't believe that they did." He said, "But should they hate you?" He said, "This is how you'll know. They'll send you hate mail." It was a community, kind of closed community, but a community where people, when they didn't like somebody, they sent them hate mail. I lived in the community, served in the community, left the community, and to this day, many years later, I never got hate mail. And I still have friends in the community. That's important for you to know, because some people will write you a nasty note to tell you how much better you could be if you do what they say. One more question. Come on, somebody. Please put your hand up. I can't see it. Nobody? Okay. Dr. McNulty?
Thank you again, Dr. Romine. That was wonderful. One more round of applause, please.